Well. 2024 certainly has been a pretty mixed year for games, hasn't it? On one hand, it looks like the games industry at large is just about to collapse under its own weight. We've had a string of expensive, high-profile failures, beloved studios are having their staff cut to ribbons, and as big publishers have gotten more and more desperate for cash, we've had to endure an absolute avalanche of greedy, exploitative slop designed to make a quick buck and not much else. But, on the other hand, and in many ways in spite of the AAA industry's ongoing crisis, 2024 has been a fantastic year for truly creative and interesting video games. Balatro released early on this year and completely took over our lives, catapulting the developer into indie game stardom. The JRPG staged a surprise comeback with Final Fantasy VII Rebirth and Metaphor ReFantazio. Helldivers 2, a bold, innovative, and really fun squad-based shooter, proved to everyone that live service games don't have to be terrible. The excellent Stalker 2 got made by a company in an actual war zone. Astrobot came out and warmed the cold, dead husk that was my heart. And look, there have been a bunch of great games that have come out this year, and there's never been a better time to celebrate all that the talented developers working against the odds have achieved in the last 365 days. But I think that in all the praise that's been heaped upon the most successful titles of this year, we've ended up overshadowing a lot of smaller games that are just as good and have overcome even worse odds that also deserve their time in the spotlight. That's why every year I take it upon myself to compile a list of 20 games in no particular order from the last 12 months that you should have played, but that you probably didn't. I'm not talking about the biggest or the best games of 2024, there are loads of lists that do that, but instead the year's most creative, interesting, and unique titles that I think deserve just as much attention as the things you'd find on Jeff Keighley's monument to selling out, and that you owe it to yourself to play. And to help you out even more, I'll also highlight the cheapest price I could find for these games in the obligatory winter sales, as well as if I could find them on any sort of subscription service. Does that sound good? You ready? Awesome. Let's get things started with Cryptmas, which is an old school dungeon crawler all about words. What are your attacks? Words. How do you solve puzzles? Words. How do you uncover your backstory? Guess what? You need to play Hangman to make your zombified party members remember their pasts. In case it wasn't obvious, Cryptmaster's central gimmick is incredibly unique, and it's stuffed into every single facet of the game, from names being health bars, to you solving riddles to unlock more spells. But what really lifts the game beyond just being a single good idea is its incredible sense of tone, aided by the omnipresent Cryptmaster, who has a truly staggering number of responses to anything you could think to type in, and he's incredibly funny and full of character to boot. In terms of pure creativity, Cryptmaster is more than worth a buy, and it doesn't hurt that it's a pretty good RPG too. Following the RPG trend, we've got Caves of Qud, which is maybe the best traditional roguelike released in ever? And a good thing too, because it took 15 years to make. It's got all the hallmarks of the genre: brutal dungeon crawling, loads of loot to plunder, and some fun exploitable mechanics like the ability to bully people into becoming your best friend, or selling infinite items to a mind-controlled fish, you know, the usual stuff. But what really puts Qud above every other boring fantasy game is its insane post-apocalyptic desert sci-fi setting, filled with ancient digitally transcended sultans and interdimensional horrors existing in the same sort of space as these dorky little goblin guys. Qud has so much to see that after many failed runs I've barely scratched the surface of all the things there are to do, like become an 8-armed mutant or fight your own time-traveling evil twin, and that means that I'm sure you'll probably find something even cooler that I've not even heard of, because I'm too busy dying to the world's most homicidal baboons right at the start of the game. For an entirely different, completely non-traditional roguelike on the other hand, you've got to check out Pacific Drive. It's a car roguelike, and unlike anything I've ever played before. You drive around rural America scavenging bits and bobs to keep your car from falling apart, all the while managing fuel, damage from dangerous anomalies, and the occasional disintegration of reality. And it's in this brilliantly Moorish survival loop of pootling around, juggling risks and returning home to install some upgrades/replacements that the game finds this incredibly relaxing rhythm, punctuated by the occasional moment of incredibly exciting pure stress. Not only that, by making you actually do all the fiddly busy work of performing repairs, remembering to put your handbrake on, and learning all the weird idiosyncrasies that your Eldritch SCP car gradually picks up, you gain a genuine attachment to the weird bucket of bolts that is almost enough to make me forgive it for bashing me in the head whenever I close the boot. Ow. Now, for all the praise I heap upon weird, out-there games that bend the rules and do wacky stuff, sometimes you do just want something dead simple, done really well. And for that, you need to look no further than Mini-Shoot Adventures. It's old-school top-down Zelda, but also a shoot-'em-up, and the duo behind the game have absolutely nailed that concept. Minishoot is gorgeous, it's got super snappy controls, an honestly insane variety of really creative enemies, and a densely layered map packed with cool secrets that would put actual Zelda games to shame. Seriously, where a lot of other titles released these days can feel bloated and indulgent, Minishoot Adventures is a game that sets out to do one thing really well and never ever distracts from it. Really, the only seal of quality you should need is that I spent the entire time playing the game making pew 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 noises in a state of childlike whimsy. It's that good. Speaking of super chill games, next up we've got GRUN, which is an absolutely lovely gardening game that has you spending a nice relaxing weekend in the Netherlands tending to some guy's garden after their previous gardener went mysteriously missing. But you don't need to worry about that. All you need to do is have a nice time chopping grass, cleaning up trash, maybe hang with the friendly locals, have fun looking at the kooky garden gnomes, try not to get lost in a series of dark, non-Euclidean alternate dimensions. Did you see that? Was that a guy? Is someone watching me? And oh god, why are there so many gnomes now? I just wanted to do some gardening and oh no, what is this place? Oh fuck, it's the previous gardener and it's that guy again. And oh my god, what is that thing? Oh, he's coming after me. Oh no, I'm friendly. No, leave me alone. Ah! Next up, we have Laurel's Lure, which, to be honest, is a game that I don't even really have to sell you on. One look at its gigantic, twisted structures of ruined alien machinery, and you will know instantly whether this game is your vibe or not. Fundamentally, Laurel's Lure is a game all about traversal, but unlike many other games designed around movement, its world is harsh and uncomfortable and feels like it really wasn't designed with you in mind. Everything is too big, too disordered, and too far apart, and that's what makes the puzzle solving of how to get around and how to push your pinions to their limits incredibly satisfying, as you take on these mammoth structures and slowly but surely conquer them, piecing together a path and delving ever deeper into this weird, broken world. Laurel's Lure has the best climbing in any video game ever. Buy it. On a similar, though much more colourful platforming theme, we've also got Yellow Taxi Goes Vroom, which is an almost sickeningly pretty homage to the old school collectathon platforming greats. With one key difference: you're not playing as a plumber, you're playing as a car. And cars, well, they can't jump. What this means is that Yellow Taxi's levels feel totally different to any other platformer you've ever played, and see you zooming off ramps and performing crazy air brakes as you zip around a bunch of levels, pushing the mechanics to the limits to reach areas that it feels like you shouldn't be allowed to go. True to its namesake, there are even some crazy taxi-inspired bits in the game, which are a fantastic little diversion as well, and really show off the driving mechanics. Yellow Taxi Goes Vroom is adorable, has glorious music, challenging level design without being too frustrating, and the bad guy is, totally unrelated to anyone in real life. Let's just leave it there. In the vein of very silly takes on established genres, we've got King of the Bridge, wherein you have to play chess against the troll, except it's not regular chess, it's troll chess, and you don't know any of the rules, and if that weren't bad enough, this bastard constantly cheats at his own damn game. Essentially, what looks to begin with like a simple chess simulation quickly becomes this great exercise in figuring out what the rules actually are, like the fact that two rooks next to each other turn into a mega castle and the pawns can move backwards now, followed by mastering how to exploit these rules to your advantage while trying not to get scammed yourself. King of the Bridge is really clever, it's a great inversion of a classic game, and best of all, it's dead cheap. And also, just a quick tip, you see the little horsey guys? Yeah, they can move in like an L shape. It's pretty complicated. That one took me a few days to figure out. You're welcome. If you're after a bit more of an intellectual game, then I suggest you check out Mecha Bellum, which is an absolutely amazing mix of auto-battlers and strategy games. Each round, both you and your opponent buy a few battalions of robots, and then you watch them fight. It's that simple. But out of this straightforward premise emerges some incredible strategic depth as you try and second-guess your opponent's positioning, invest your cash wisely, and most importantly of all, figure out where you want to fire this nuke. The thing I love most about Mecha Bellum is how every unit type has the potential to take over the game, from swarms of tiny crawlers, to giant laser beam blasting melting points, to even the humble sniper, with each unit getting a bunch of upgrades that can also totally reshape the game around themselves. It's all the fun of StarCraft with none of the time pressure, and all the strategy of chess, but less boring because it's got robots in. If you are smarter than I am, I'm sure you will love Mecha Bellum. At the complete other end of the gameplay mechanic scale, we have Mouthwashing, which is a game that wants you to hurt. It is a dark, psychedelic, deeply distressing horror story about 5 people who get trapped inside a crashed spaceship containing nothing but the bare minimum for survival and a virtually inexhaustible supply of mouthwash. Rather than relying on jump scares or other cheap tricks, instead mouthwashing is entirely psychological and uses its incredible presentation style to really get you inside the warped perspective of some deeply fucked up people. Mouthwashing luxuriates in showing you an incredibly, gloriously bleak view of humanity as the ship you're trapped inside warps around you, the world blurs over to protect you from things your character doesn't want to see, and it soon becomes impossible to tell what's a hallucination and what's actually happening, or whether the distinction even matters. Mouthwashing is absolutely not a game for the faint of heart, but for people who can stomach it, there is something utterly unique here. All you have to do is take responsibility. For another visually striking narrative game, next we have 1000 Resist, a game where mankind has been destroyed by a disease brought by a giant race of godlike alien invaders and now survives as a society of clones of the single human to develop an immunity, a once ordinary girl from a Chinese immigrant family named Iris who's now worshipped as a goddess by her copies. And just to make it clear, that's like the premise of the game. That's the shit you learn in the first 15 minutes, and it goes to some pretty wild places after that as you lurch between the present and the simulated past. The game is in equal parts absolutely cracking speculative fiction, a small-scale story about the immigrant diaspora experience, and a meditation on the coronavirus pandemic. I can hardly do justice to the scope of 1000 Resist story here, but it's easily the best written game of the year, and it needs to be seen to be believed. Heki Almo, sisters.
Hey up, lad, thank goodness you're here. There I were, about to recommend a right proper good comedy game, when some bloody scamp went and stole me authentic Yorkshire accent. How am I supposed to talk about Thank Goodness You're Here now? In any case, Thank Goodness You're Here is an incredibly English game, packed with surreal humour, centred around the tiny town into north of England, named Barnsworth. The place is full to bursting with personality, and filled with some fantastically realised characters that turn what could otherwise be a simple parody job into a really authentic celebration of the mundane wackiness of English village life, and the limits of helping people. It's got a cracking voice cast, a translation option for all you bloody southerners who can't understand the local lingo, and the only mechanic of note is brain things with your little yellow hands. The only thing better is one of Big Ron's big pies. Champion scram that.
Next up, we have Straft, which is hands down one of the single ugliest games I've ever played, but don't worry, it's all done on purpose to take you back to an era where shooters were simple. Just you, an arena, and some person you've invested your entire sense of self-worth into beating into the dirt. Straft takes the form of a first to six series of lightning-fast 1v1 duels where both of you have to sprint and slide around to desperately get your hands on whatever weapon you can, and then hope to god that it actually shoots straight. Yeah, despite some awesome movement mechanics and snappy controls, Straft embraces the silliness of shooter games and has you trying to push your opponent into mines or blast them with a blunderbuss just as often as it puts you into tense sniper duels. The best thing is that it's free, so you've got basically no excuse not to challenge whoever it is that you've most recently declared a blood feud with. Go get it. My other favourite FPS of the year was I Am Your Beast, which is like if you took Neon White and made it a fast, frenetic proper shooter instead of a platformer in disguise. I Am Your Beast shooting is incredibly hectic, to the point that your first run through any level will almost always be a total disaster. But by the time you're shooting for those S-ranks, you'll be gliding through the chaos in an elegant dance of death as you'll hurl precisely timed knives, get MLG Pro headshots to shave precious seconds off your time, and hit as many enemy soldiers as possible with swarms of bees. Seriously, the game is basically John Wick Simulator. It's this brilliant melding of improvisation and skill, and if you like the idea of clicking on heads really fast, you really should give it a go. A second streamlined take on an existing genre can be found in Another Crab's Treasure, which succeeds not just on the merits of being a damn fine Dark Souls game in its own right, but in doing something that not even FromSoft could pull off, and that's being an actually approachable introduction to the genre. Of course, the game does have a bunch of personality of its own too. Having to keep swapping out your shell mid-combat gives the game a more defensive, reactive feel, and the cracking designs on the bosses and areas lend the experience more of a comedic touch without sacrificing depth. Also, special attention needs to go to the game's unaccountably excellent writing and the way it goes unexpectedly hard when it comes to talking about climate change and ecological collapse, which were much bigger parts of the story than I was expecting. If you were ever wondering how to get into Souls-like games, or you want to try a shell with a bit more of a relaxed fit, Another Crab's Treasure is exactly the game you need. And that brings us on to Reuse 2, which also has a crab in it. Look, I'm trying my best here. The original Reuse game was a planet-building, optimization, puzzling diamond in the rough, but the sequel is a diamond in the, smooth? Whatever, it's great. Reuse is all about building synergies in order to create the nicest possible world for your little people to live on, involving smashing together the components of each biome, all while managing your limited time and the health of the ecosystem. There's an incredible amount of depth to the game as you figure out the most insane combos to rocket your people into a golden age, and an incredible variety of ways to do it, from feeding a bunch of things to sharks, to showering your people in gemstones, to building a giant forest filled with skunks. Every game of Reuse has been different, and they've all made my brain hurt, whilst also being super chill. Go pick it up. If you're after more traditional puzzles though, check out Laureli and the Laser Eyes, which is at the forefront of the recent discovery game / escape room boom for one reason and one reason alone. and that is because that no other game commits as hard to the idea as this one. Every single step you take in Laureli reveals new layers of nuance, new pieces of symbolism you've mistaken for background details, and new reasons to feel like an idiot as the game stretches some basic puzzle-solving premises, you're basically always just guessing numerical codes, into realms of the abstract and conceptual that you wouldn't have even thought possible. Seriously, the sheer number of puzzles that you can't even perceive until you've decoded the game's visual language is staggering, and their gloriously, meticulously interconnected nature is fitting for a game that is in many ways a love letter to puzzles themselves. It's awesome, go play it. Phew. That is 17 games that you should have played from this year. Now, before we get onto the final 3, I should just let you know that these are my special picks for really good games that are just a teeny tiny bit better than the other ones, and so if you're only going to buy one game on this list, it should probably be one of these. Does that sound good? Okay, let's start with a fantastic multiplayer game from the geniuses over at Rocksteady, Suicide Squad. Wait, what? Is it getting shut down? They didn't even finish the story? What? Alright, fine. The second game I want to talk about is a contender to the Call of Duty crown, and X-Defiant is getting shut down as well. Great. Well, at least the third game isn't going anywhere because Sony put hundreds of millions into it, and it's even got a spot on that new Amazon series, and hero shooters almost always do well, and Concord it's gone, isn't it? Fuck. Alright, okay, you know what? Fine. I don't care. I'll come up with 3 totally new games. I'll make it up off the top of my head if I have to. Whatever. See if I care. Which is to say that first up in the real series of games that I think you really need to play is Arctic Eggs, the world's worst cooking game and the world's best game about hostile art, the human need to create, and wondering whether you can fry an egg on top of Mount Everest. Arctic Eggs is, at its most basic level, a dexterity challenge. Every request you get will involve you being given an egg, and you needing to fry it on one side by sliding it around the pan, and then you needing to flip it over to fry it on the other side. Which sounds simple, but it's easier said than done, because the controls are deliberately horrible and you have to do literally everything with the mouse. Seriously, beating the tutorial took me like 10 minutes, and the game only gets weirder and more frustrating as you go and explore its dystopic but weirdly chill Eastern European apocalypse. With every step of progress, Arctic Eggs makes your job even trickier, making you fry more than one egg at once, throwing some bacon into the mix, then some cans of fish, bottles of beer, a bunch of cigarettes, occasionally bullets, cockroaches, and of course, the obligatory mysterious cube of meat. And while these twists, as well as others like the absolutely rancid level that reverses your controls, are incredibly frustrating, they give way to a profound sense of satisfaction when you finally master them. And really, that's what the game is all about. Interspersed within the irreverent nonsense is a game that's really about the joy of doing stupid stuff just because you can, of embracing the inefficient, the impractical, and the difficult, because while these experiences might not be what you're supposed to do, they still have value. And I think that's an incredibly important lesson that everybody owes it to themselves to experience. Also, you get to pat a chicken, so there's a little bit of something for everyone. Second in the Hall of Fame of games you really have to play from 2024, we've got Tactical Breach Wizards. And no, I'm not just putting it here because I really love tactics games, I'm putting it here because it is the perfect example of what happens when you commit wholeheartedly to a single design vision and end up pulling it off. Tactical Breach Wizards is not just a great dudes on a map game with all sorts of strategic depth and interesting problems to solve, it's not just a superbly written military thriller, it's also exactly what you think of when you think Tactical Breach Wizards. There's a Riot Priest who's got a big shield and can charge people out of windows, there's a Storm Witch who can fly around on a broom, knock a guy out of a window and then defenestrate some of his friends with a massive chain lightning attack, there's a Necro Medic who can unkill people by shooting them with her magic gun so they can punt a few more people down 10 stories, and look, there's a lot of defenestration going on, but the game never stops being about that immediately appealing comedy concept of doing cool Tom Clancy stuff just with silly magic powers instead. And speaking of comedy, the game is funny. Like, actually properly funny in a way that's not just ripping off out-of-date memes and 3-year-old Reddit posts. The dialogue between levels consistently had me in genuine stitches, and brings out some amazing Douglas Adams-style absurdist sincerity without ever intruding upon the gameplay, with a particular recurring favourite being Steve the Traffic Warlock, who's the only enemy in the game with good enough hearing to listen in on your pre-mission banter, and who regularly gets in screaming matches with Jen, the aforementioned Storm Witch. Also, he throws ghost cars full of skeletons at people. Look, the game's awesome, just play it before I spoil all the jokes, okay? And the final game from 2024 that I think you really, truly have to play is, well, It's not actually a single game at all, because it's 50. UFO 50 isn't just a collection of retro minigames, it's a fictional historiography of a made-up video game company, tracking their games from the very start of their career with the janky, not entirely finished Barbuta to the end of the 8-bit era with Cyber Owls. It's fantastic to peek into what is essentially an alternate game design reality, and see all the lessons get learned and design tropes evolve from game to game as ideas get more advanced and the UFO Soft team is able to design more and more ambitious games. And it doesn't hurt that basically all the tiles are pretty good as well. But 50 games can be a bit overwhelming, so what I'm gonna do is to create a list inside a list inside a list and quickly go through the 10 games of UFO 50 that you should have played, but that you probably didn't. Starting with Magic Garden. It's Snake but better designed with an excellent risk versus reward dynamic to encourage chasing high scores. Mortal, a platformer where you spend your current life to make platforms that you can then use on subsequent attempts at the level. Genius. Mooncat. No game has ever controlled like Mooncat, it's glorious rule-defying madness, and I love it to bits. Campanella, a really hard piloting game with incredibly satisfying controls and the start of UFO 50's main franchise. It's the most important game in the behind-the-scenes canon. Golfaria, a fully fledged open-world adventure game, except you're a golf ball and you have to putt yourself around. I've never seen anything like it before, it's great. Warp Tank, a meticulously designed puzzle platformer that would have fit right in with the retro indie golden age boom of about a decade ago. Party House. Deck builders in my retro game collection? Yes, it's true, and it's also way more creative than like 90% of Slay the Spire knockoffs. Rail Heist. It's a stealth game, it's a cowboy game, it's a proto-immersive sim, the game is bursting with cool ideas, you need to see them. Pilot Quest. Somehow these mad bastards managed to squeeze in an entire idle game that you play in between all the others, and it is unaccountably great. Mini and Max. Genuinely the single most creative game in UFO 50, it's a puzzle adventure where you can shrink and grow between 3 different sizes. Give me a full game of this right now. Of course, the entire package of UFO 50 is more than worth playing, please do go and experience it for yourself. Maybe except Combatants, because that game sucks and is an eternal reminder that Derek Yu, creator of Spelunky, is a fallible human being after all. And there we have it, 20 games from 2024 that you should have played. We've had games from across the tonal spectrum, some very light ones and some very dark ones, as well as some games with basically no mechanics at all, to ones with, frankly, too many. There has been loads of stuff that's come out this year, and it has been a privilege to tell you all about them. Honestly, this was one of the hardest years ever to sort these damn things out and narrow the list down to just 20, so I hope that you were able to find something that you liked, that hopefully you hadn't already heard of. But if you haven't managed to find a game for you, or if you just want 5 more games you should have played, well then I've got a super secret special reserve of 5 bonus games from 2024 that I really liked, available on my Patreon page. So not only will you be getting the usual benefits of early access, behind the scenes content, and my eternal gratitude, you'll also get even more ways to indulge our capitalist masters by purchasing more things. Isn't that great? And if you are especially generous in supporting the channel, you might even get on the list of my top tier Patreon supporters, who are Ali Wright, Andrew Labrano, Auna94, Bobby, Bodybuilding Baby Balbon, Brian Atariani, Constantin Amend, Constant Out Amend, Jesus Christ, Cosmic 360, Daniel Metjes, Dirk Jan Karambeld, Digleteer, Dis Ellie, Ekton, Edward Franklin Woods, Edwina the Space Bun, Eric Woolston, Eugene Bulkin, Fulibaxi, Furious Hulk, Gazcol, Grandpa Mocker, Hairkids Noah, Jacob Dylan Riddle, Jinkaloid, Kevin Help Us, Konolov, Kangi, Luke Kokoran, Mace Window 54, Maxim Filipov, Marika Vladilena Altair, Mark Vallant, May Contain Fox-Like Substance, Michael C., Mike Oxlong, Nate Graff, Oliver Marhofer, Patrick Romberg, Peter Tomasic, Rededex, Regal Regex, Ray's Dad, Silver Fulfi, Steam Rollerman, Steve Riley, Tyler Duncan, Uprising, Whimsical Wisp, Zach Brandmeier, and Chow. Okay, that's it for me. Enjoy what's left of the sales. Sorry this one was so last minute. Have a nice 2025. I'm gonna go and fall into a coma now. Bye.